today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the phases of the moon and what causes the phases of the moon. The first thing I need you to understand, it is not anything to do with the shadow of the earth falling on the moon. That is not what causes the phases of the moon. It's not the fact that the moon like goes behind the earth or something like that. That's not it at all. What it has to do with is the fact that the earth, moon, and sun align in different ways when looking at it from the earth. So when I'm on the earth and I'm looking at the moon, and the moon is in between the sun and the earth, I'm seeing the dark side of the moon. I'm seeing the shadow side, and we call that the new moon. What happens next is the moon starts to go. In our conversation, it's kind of like it's going left. And the first thing I see is a crescent moon on the right-hand side. When I see light on the right, that means it's waxing. It's becoming more illuminated. So when the light's on the right and it's a crescent, it's a waxing crescent. And the next thing is, now I'm at a right angle. I have the earth and the moon are at right angles from the sun. And in this particular situation, we have what we call the first quarter. The light is still on the right, so it's still waxing, and it's half illuminated, so it's called the first quarter. It's 25% away around its rotation of the earth. Now, as it proceeds, it gets more than one half illuminated, and we call this gibbous. So as soon as it's more than one half illuminated, but it's not quite full, we call it gibbous, and we can still see there's a little bit of shadow on the left-hand side. Now we go a little further, and now what we have is we have the sun and the moon and the earth are all in alignment, with the earth in the middle and the moon on the outside. And we're looking at the full moon now. If we go a little farther, as it rotates around, and it's going to get a little weird here because of the shadows, but that's just me. It's not the shadow of the earth, okay? So now after we have the full moon, now as it goes left a little farther, now we see that the crescent on the right is the darkness, and the light is on the left. When the light is on the left, it is waning. That means that it's going to get less and less illuminated as time goes on. That's the waning gibbous. We go a little farther. Now half of the moon is lit again, but now it's the left-hand side, not the right-hand side. So now it's waning. We call it the last quarter or the third quarter. Keep going a little farther around. Now we're back to the crescent, but the crescent is on the left-hand side. So we call that a waning crescent, and we go around a little farther, and all of a sudden we're back to the place where we started. Now, the last thing that's really hard for me to explain to you is the idea of the shadow, and the idea that every time we go around the earth, or every time the moon goes around the earth, it doesn't go in the shadow of the earth because it has a 5% inclination, meaning it's inclined compared to our rotational turns. And so as a result of that, when it goes behind the earth, most of the time it's either above the earth or below the earth. And as a result, we don't have an eclipse. But during the spring and fall, when the planet and the sun line up a little differently, we do have opportunities where the moon can go behind the earth, and we call that a lunar eclipse. And then we have other times where the moon goes in front of the earth and casts a shadow on the earth, and that's called an eclipse. But they don't happen every month. They happen very seldom, and it takes a certain alignment for it to happen. That alignment usually happens in the spring and in the fall. When we get into the conversation about seasons, we'll talk more about that.